Wednesday on ABC.
Global demonstrations for International Women's Day today. In Bolivia, activists painting a statue of Christopher Columbus, outraged over what they claim is leniency toward rapists, abusers, and men who assault women, calling for justice for victims of violence and demanding better working conditions for women in healthcare. The first of its kind CDC guidelines for vaccinated Americans, what they say about when people can socialize and whether masks are needed, and guidance on whether certain hugging can now happen. More than 31 million people in the U.S. now fully vaccinated. The images of defiant crowds of maskless partiers as health officials warn of a new possible surge with variants now discovered in just about every state. President Biden's nearly $2 trillion COVID relief bill facing key changes before it's sent to his desk later this week, when those $1,400 stimulus checks could be mailed out. Prince Harry and Meghan's bombshell interview and the fallout tonight. The couple revealing they were questioned about their son Archie's skin color. Meghan saying the relentless pressure nearly drove her to take her own life, claiming her pleas for help were ignored by the palace. Harry commenting on the distance now between him and the rest of the royal family.
And when I'm talking about the history of being yourself, I'm talking about my mother.
A heartbreaking ordeal for a boy claiming he was invited to a sleepover only to be bullied.
I was very dazed and I didn't know what was going on, but they all urinated into a cup and then they made me drink it.
The boy and his mother join us tonight, and why they say this situation is far from over.
I just felt so, I was hurting.
And as jury selection in the Derek Chauvin trial begins, we take a look back at George Floyd's death, similar cases, and where the so-called racial reckoning stands now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. So glad to be back with you. Thanks so much for streaming with us tonight. A guideline for mask-free living, courtesy of the Centers for Disease Control. Today, the CDC released a comprehensive list for what the roughly 31 million fully vaccinated Americans can now do, including hugs from grandparents and quality time with close friends. Many of the simple things that we all once took for granted are now possible again for those who are fully vaccinated. Indoor gatherings without a mask are now on the table, and you can also start to see friends or family who have not been vaccinated. Tonight, though, there are some concerns over what was left out and why this took so long. The vaccine may be starting to have a real impact on COVID cases, though. The daily average is now below 60,000 new cases for the first time since mid-October. And relief for hard-hit Americans is on the way. The Senate passing the massive $1.9 trillion package this weekend. The House is expected to sign off in the next day or so. But tonight, images like this one, spring break party in Florida, are fueling concerns that some states are relaxing guidelines too quickly. Victor Akendo leads us off tonight from Miami.
Tonight, that long-awaited roadmap for millions of Americans now getting the vaccine.
With more and more people getting vaccinated each day, we are starting to turn a corner.
New CDC guidelines say 2 weeks after a final dose, fully vaccinated people can gather indoors in small groups without masks or social distancing. Those who are vaccinated can also gather with another unvaccinated household without masks, as long as the unvaccinated group is at low risk for serious illness.
If grandparents have been vaccinated, they can visit their daughter and her family, even if they have not been vaccinated, so long as the daughter and her family are not at risk for severe disease.
In Miami, Minerva Rodriguez just got her first dose and can't wait to see her grandchildren again, but she's going to play it safe by these new guidelines.
Better to follow the rules than not to follow the rules. Look what happens every time people don't follow the rules. Things go up. You know, the cases go up, the hospitals get crowded.
The CDC now says vaccinated people like Minerva should still wear masks and practice social distancing in public. Sisters Adrienne Jackson and Monica Kuumba just got their first shots today. Monica hasn't seen her daughter in over a year.
Yeah, so that's one of the first things on the list.
The CDC saying vaccinated grandparents can visit healthy family nearby, but is still urging vaccinated people to avoid non-essential travel, like a flight to see grandchildren or a family trip.
Every time that there's a surge in travel, we have a surge in cases in this country.
Americans eager to restart their lives, but tonight, new warnings after scenes like this. One expert calling it a perfect storm. Spring breakers descending on beaches and bars in Florida, where the UK variant is accelerating. In Daytona, hundreds of motorcycles rumbling in for Bike Week, and in Atlanta, crowds celebrating the NBA All-Star Game. This as more states lift restrictions and drop mask mandates. Texas just the latest.
We can see the light at the end of the tunnel because we've spent a year battling, trying to survive, underwater, suffocating, wondering, do I close it? Do I keep it open?
But today, essential workers protesting the lifting of the mask mandate, saying their lives are being put at risk.
The answer is vaccinate. Vaccinate first.
Our thanks to Victor. And let's now bring in former acting head of the CDC and friend of the show, Dr. Richard Besser. Thanks so much for your time tonight, Doctor.
Good to be here, Lindsay.
So as we've mentioned, the CDC is now out with those new guidelines today for what fully vaccinated Americans can and can't do. As the former acting director of the CDC, you know how many considerations go into guidelines like this. But do you feel that this took too long? I mean, more than 31 million Americans are already fully vaccinated and have had to figure out a lot of this on their own.
Yeah, you know, I think it was slow. One of the slogans that you have in public health and in emergency response is be first, be right, be credible. And CDC missed the opportunity to be first. But I think the guidance that came out is credible and is based on the best available public health science. I hope as we learn more that the guidance comes out a little faster.
And let's talk now about where there seems to be a bit of gray area, visits between fully vaccinated people and unvaccinated people. If you've been fully vaccinated, should you feel comfortable seeing an unvaccinated friend not in a high-risk category inside without a mask?
Yeah, so that is something that may have surprised some people in the guidance, that they do allow for that. The feeling here is that these vaccines that we have are highly effective, highly protective, and the risk is to the individual who's in that setting who is unvaccinated. So if it's an individual who's at low risk of having serious illness, the CDC is saying you can be together. And so that opens the door for grandparents to meet with their children and their grandchildren and have that kind of contact. And I know for a lot of people, just that movement towards some semblance of normalcy will be a great emotional release. And I hope for some people who've been on the fence about getting vaccinated, it will encourage more people to do so.
You talked about emotional release. Let's talk about maybe that physical release of traveling again. The CDC said that it's not updating its travel recommendations and requirements for those who have been fully vaccinated, but we've seen some states drop quarantine rules. Do you think that this has the potential to create some confusion and as well as frustration, as we know that people have been cooped up for a year now? Should someone feel safe traveling to see their family or a small group out of state?
Well, it sounds like that guidance is in the works, and it's something that is definitely needed. People need to know, is it safe to get in a car and drive to visit people? Is it safe enough if you're fully vaccinated to get on an airplane and go and visit people? This is something where as more and more people around the country are getting vaccinated, and as states are opening up and removing restrictions, we'll want to know where the CDC fits on that. The guidance that currently is out there was in place before there was any vaccination at all. So people want to know how that will change with the current state of vaccination.
And the new guidance also does not have specifics on restaurants or other businesses. Just last month, Dr. Fauci warned that fully vaccinated Americans should wait before they start eating inside of restaurants or go to movies. Are you worried that this might cause some more confusion as well?
Well, there will always be confusion, but I think one of the concerns here is that with new variants spreading around the country, the science isn't in terms of what level of protection you're going to get from these vaccines. And so in a household setting where you can have some control over who is there and whether the people you are with are people who are at low risk or high risk, there the CDC was willing to go. But in a restaurant, especially in states that are now moving towards 100% occupancy, occupancy. The potential exists that someone who's fully vaccinated, or the science isn't in to know whether someone who's fully vaccinated who's been exposed to a variant could spread that to someone else. You don't know whether you're around people who are at higher risk. So it's clear that they weren't willing to go there at this time.
Dr. B, always appreciate your wisdom and insight. Thanks so much. Now to President Biden's massive COVID relief bill. It is now before the House after it cleared the Senate this weekend. So how long will it take before it reaches the president's desk? And when will those $1,400 checks for most Americans be on the way? ABC's chief White House correspondent Cecilia Vega joins us now. Cecilia, what's the timeline for final passage? And are there any hurdles that remain?
Hey, Lindsay, well, we could be looking at a pretty quick timeline, actually. The Democrats expect to take this up as early as Wednesday. They want to have this on the president's desk by the end of the week. And the White House told me today that Americans can expect to see these checks in their hands potentially by the end of this month. So that is good news for a lot of Americans. The president did end up having to make a few concessions. So let me show you what exactly those are. Fewer people are going to be eligible for those stimulus checks. If you earn $75,000 a year or less, you're going to get the $1,400. But if you earn less than $80,000 a year, you're looking at a much smaller check. Weekly unemployment benefits. The White House wanted those to be around $400. They're going to end up being around $300. There's also no longer a $15 an hour minimum wage mandate. Lindsay, I know you guys have been talking about this as well. This bill did not get a single Republican to vote for it. That is a big deal for a president who campaigned on bipartisanship. We are also being told, Lindsay, that we expect the president to be making his very first primetime address. That's going to take place on Thursday. He's going to be addressing the one-year anniversary, that marking of the year that our country has been shut down since COVID, talking about all the sacrifices that Americans have had to make. And certainly the stimulus bill will come up in that.
Cecilia Vega reporting in from the White House. Thank you so much. Thanks. Turning now to the interview that many deemed as must-see TV. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's interview with Oprah and the explosive revelations, including Markle's mental health struggles and potentially having suicidal thoughts, and a hurtful conversation with a family member about the potential color of their baby's skin. Our James Longman has the latest tonight from London.
Tonight, America, the UK, the world reacting to Meghan and Harry, no longer silent.
That's the sad irony of the last 4 years, is I've advocated for so long for women to use their voice, and then I was silent.
Were you silent or were you silenced?
The latter.
Meghan also revealing the deep loneliness, the isolation, the thoughts of suicide, saying she asked Buckingham Palace for help, but she said there was none.
I just didn't want to be alive anymore. And that was a very clear and real and frightening, constant thought. And I remember how he just cradled me, and I went to the institution and I said that I needed to go somewhere to get help. I said that I've never felt this way before and I need to go somewhere. And I was told that I couldn't, that it wouldn't be good for the institution.
The most explosive allegation involving race, questions about what baby Archie would look like.
In those months when I was pregnant, all around this same time, so we have in tandem the conversation of he won't be given security, he's not going to be given a title, and also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What? There's a conversation with you?
With Harry.
About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh. And you're not going to tell me who had the conversation?
I think that would be very damaging to them.
There's no way to verify these claims, and the palace has yet to comment. But Meghan says it was a conversation had with Prince Harry, Oprah asking him about it.
What was that conversation?
That conversation I'm never going to share. But at the time it was awkward. I was a bit shocked.
Can you tell us what the question was?
No. I'm not comfortable sharing that.
Prince Harry and why he believes they had no choice but to leave.
What I was seeing was history repeating itself, but more perhaps, or definitely far more dangerous, because then you add race in and you add social media in. And when I'm talking about history repeating itself, I'm talking about my mother.
Prince Harry and Meghan saying they still talk with the Queen, but for a time, Prince Charles was not talking to his son.
My grandmother and I have a really good relationship and an understanding, and I have a deep respect for her. She's my Colonel-in-Chief, right? She always will be.
Your relationship with your father? Is he taking your calls now?
Yeah, he is. There's a lot to work through there. You know, I feel really let down because he's been through something similar. He knows what pain feels like, and Archie's his grandson. But at the same time, you know, of course, I will always love him. But there's a lot of hurt that's happened.
James Longman joins us now. And James, wow. I mean, lots to discuss here. Let's start out with the discussion of their child's skin tone and the reaction from the British public who've now finally seen this bombshell interview. What are people saying?
Shock, disgust, I think. I just think to see a member of the royal family, not a wife like we've seen before with Diana, but a member of the royal family sit there and make those claims has really sent shockwaves through the United Kingdom. You know, Britain has a strange relationship with its royal family. We love them, but we hate them, but we don't like other people to hate them. So I think there's a sense that it's not right that, you know, an American comes out and says these things. Britain hasn't had, I think it's fair to say, the kind of reckoning with its racist past in the way that perhaps the United States is having at the moment. So there are a lot of questions around this. I think fundamentally there are big questions about who said this and in the context of which it was said. If there is a senior member of the royal family who genuinely has warped racist ideas, we should all know. And it perhaps shouldn't have been in an interview with Oprah that we find that out. And we don't really find enough about it out, right? It's just kind of left hanging. There's not really enough information. We don't know if it was a kind of an off-the-cuff comment by an elderly member of the family who maybe should know better but is too old-fashioned, or if these were repeated, angry, vicious statements made at a pregnant woman. We don't know. And I think that's what people in this country are mostly upset about. These things were just left hanging in the air, and they're going to need answers. Lindsay?
And the context of that, though, may not even be that important considering the content of those allegations. But we'll move on to the mental health revelation, which is both sad as well as frustrating, especially since mental health is a cause that has been taken up by the royal family. Any reaction today from the palace on the allegation that she was deprived of help, or any response to any of the allegations made in the interview?
There hasn't been a response yet. We expect there's going to be some kind of response. A lot of people here will say, well, there's a reason why Harry and Meghan spoke this way, because they knew that any response from the palace would be kind of muted. We expect something. We're not sure what it's going to be yet. On mental health, you're absolutely right. It's enormously embarrassing, actually, for the palace. You know, we spent years talking about how this was the great cause that they wanted to champion. And actually, before even Meghan was on the scene, it was the Fab Three. It was Will, Kate, and Harry who were talking about mental health. It was the next generation of royalty which was really pushing this. So the idea that a woman actually felt that she wanted to end her life, she says the words, "I didn't want to be alive anymore." I mean, that was so devastating. This palace, this royal family, this monarchy needs to deal with this. It is serious, and it's a bombshell that it's going to reverberate for a long, long while yet. Lindsay?
Yeah, we can imagine. James, thank you so much. And to those of you, if you're watching and you're struggling perhaps with thoughts of suicide or worried about a friend or loved one, help is available at the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255-TALK, or you can text TALK to 741-741 for free confidential emotional support 24/7. And joining us now is ABC News royal contributor Victoria Murphy. Victoria, thanks so much for your time tonight. Let's talk specifically about the fact that Harry and Meghan both made it clear that the Queen was always kind to them, yet they were rather critical of both Charles and William. Family dynamics are always complicated. Where do these relationships go from here?
Well, I think that's a very good question, Lindsay. I mean, one of the many revelations in the interview was Harry being very open about what has gone on behind closed doors with his family. He was really open about the fact that his relationship with his father and his brother have really deteriorated. He spoke about Charles not taking his calls for a period of time. And he said his relationship with his brother now is about space. The one person who didn't receive any personal criticism was the Queen. They were very careful to be, full of praise really for her, describing her as warm, and Harry speaking about how much they had communicated with her over the last year. But, there's only so long, I think, that you can separate these personal relationships from the institution. And they didn't criticize the Queen directly, but they were incredibly critical, a scathing assessment of the establishment that she has presided over. So I do think that, there's a lot of bridges to be built after this. And as Harry said, I think it could take quite a significant amount of time for those personal relationships to be rebuilt.
Sure. And as expected, the late Princess Diana also played a role in all of this, from Harry saying that his inheritance from her paid for their security to Meghan wearing her bracelet during the interview. What do you see as the parallels between Diana's relationship with the royal family and now, in particular, with her son and his wife?
Well, I think, Harry and Meghan have been really keen to bring Diana's memory into a lot of things that they've done. As you say, the symbolism of Meghan wearing her bracelet. They spoke about Diana a lot in this interview. Meghan saying that she'd reached out to one of Diana's friends to talk about what she was going through. And even just the fact that the interview was taking place, so many echoes of that Panorama interview that Diana did just over 25 years ago. I think it's probably important to remember, though, that there are differences, because Diana was on her own when she left the royal family, and she was also physically pursued by photographers in a way that Harry and Meghan have not been. They feel very affronted by the coverage, but they have not been physically followed in the same way that Diana was.
And you've covered the royals certainly for a long time now. The topic of press coverage has long been a big one. They both felt that they didn't get support from family members. What can you tell us about your dealings with the palace and how they handled media inquiries about the couple?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, the media has been such a big part of this story, and Meghan and Harry's criticism of the coverage has been very public, and also their coverage. I would say that having done this for 10 years and having dealt with palace press officers in that period of time, that I hadn't noticed a change in the way that they responded to stories about Harry and Meghan in comparison to any about what they give away. They never want to say very much about personal stories. They often say no comment. Occasionally there might be a bit of guidance. And I don't think that there was a change there with Harry and Meghan. But I think maybe the question that we should be asking is, maybe should there have been a difference? Because Meghan said in this interview, she joined the family in the truly internet age. And I do think we've consistently underestimated the significance of that. When a new member joins, there's so much interest, and you amplify that in this internet and social media age in a way that was not possible even 10 years ago. One story becomes 1,000 stories in minutes. And coupled with the issue of racism that we obviously hadn't seen with other members before, I think maybe the question is, should they have taken a more proactive stance than perhaps they were used to taking in the past?
And lastly, do you think that anything positive came out of the interview last night? And do you think any of the revelations made will have lasting impacts?
I mean, I certainly think there'll be lasting impact from the interview, huge lasting impact, because it's such a big moment and there were so many revelations. I'm not convinced that the impact will be that positive at the moment, but there were definitely positive things that they said. They spoke about the fact that their next baby is going to be a little girl. That was really lovely news. They also spoke a little bit about Archie, and they do seem to be very happy in their new lives, and they feel that they've made the right decision. So there were moments of positivity there, definitely.
ABC News royal contributor Victoria Murphy, thank you so much as always.
Thank you.
And when we come back, the brazen attack against police who tried to break up a massive street party that was violating COVID protocols in a Colorado college town. The mother and son speaking out after the boy claims that he was invited to a sleepover only to get bullied and tortured. But up next, with jury selection set to begin in the trial against the officer accused of killing George Floyd, our look at other similar cases and the so-called racial reckoning.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
Can I kick it? Yes, I can.
Tuesday night on Soul of a Nation. It will be powerfully great.
I see the tears in your eyes. When you started Black Lives Matter, did you ever imagine something like this?
Yes, but...
See, now you're going to have all of us crying.
Real stories, real conversation, and there will be music.
Soul of a Nation.
Tuesday night at 10/9 Central on ABC.
Sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
Wednesday night, get ready for
a con so big, so outrageous, never seen anything like it before.
Meet the Prince, pretending to be part of one of the world's richest royal families.
Living large.
But
holy cow, who is this person?
He stole approximately $8.1 million.
Where was all this money coming from? Buckle up.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
I'm Whoopi Goldberg. This is The Con.
All new and royally good. Wednesday on ABC.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC. Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning. #1 in the evening. With America's most watched newscast. #1 in late night versus the competition. The #1 news magazine on Friday nights. #1 in politics across this historic election versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show. And #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
Oh, yo, put the gun down.
Take a look at this shootout captured in a Brooklyn apartment. Police arrived after responding to a call about a man who shot his roommate. When they confronted the suspect, he opened fire in a stairwell. 2 officers were injured. The suspect was taken into custody. The victim is in stable condition. The murder trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin in the death of George Floyd was delayed today. Prosecutors asked the judge to put jury selection on hold as the judge is being asked to consider reinstating a third-degree murder charge against Chauvin. Of course, this case has gotten lots of attention. It is seen as triggering the country to take a harder look at our state of racial affairs. But months later, just in the city of Columbus, Ohio alone, weeks apart, 2 unarmed black men were killed by police. So what exactly has changed or been reckoned with in regard to criminal justice? ABC's TJ Holmes reports.
9 minutes and 20 seconds of a knee on a man's neck that sparked a reckoning. George Floyd dying as a Minneapolis police officer, Derek Chauvin, had a knee on his neck. His death galvanized a movement. Marches across the country, people demanding justice, demanding change.
He can't breathe! He can't breathe! He can't breathe!
Now, jury selection underway this week in the trial of now former officer Derek Chauvin, who faces murder and manslaughter charges. According to court documents, he intends to assert that he is not guilty because he acted in self-defense and that he used reasonable force. Meanwhile, Minneapolis is again on edge, many bracing for the weeks ahead as the case plays out in court.
We are optimistic that based on the evidence, the overwhelming evidence, that Derek Chauvin should be found guilty of the highest crimes.
In the aftermath of Floyd's death were immediate calls for changes in policing. Activists, protesters, and communities demanding accountability and imploring law enforcement and really the country to value black lives. Did that happen? Less than 3 weeks after Floyd's death, another video that we again watched in horror. 27-year-old Rayshard Brooks died from an encounter with police in a Wendy's parking lot in Atlanta. Police say he resisted arrest and grabbed a taser from Officer Devin Brosnan. Another officer on the scene, Garrett Rolfe, then shot Brooks in the back as he was running from the officers.
I do believe that Rayshard Brooks should be alive.
ABC News contributor L.Z. Granderson says police, even in the most tense situations, need to do more to preserve life.
You can still arrest people. How do we know this? Because we all watched what happened in January 6th at the Capitol. Police officers are more than capable of dealing with people who are behaving in a criminal fashion without killing them.
Officer Garrett Rolfe was promptly fired after the incident and charged with murder. He maintains his innocence according to his lawyer. Officer Brosnan, who did not shoot Brooks, was given lesser charges stemming from the incident. He remains employed by the Atlanta Police Department on administrative duty. Those cases are pending. Then in August, yet another shocking viral video. Kenosha, Wisconsin. Jacob Blake shot 7 times in the back and side while turned away from Officer Rustin Shesky. Blake survived the encounter, which fueled outrage across the country and days of heated protest and chaotic scenes from Kenosha. Blake later talked to ABC's Michael Strahan.
I didn't want to be the next George Floyd. I didn't want to die.
His lawyer, Ben Crump, says Blake's story underscores what he says are 2 justice systems in America.
Kyle Rittenhouse shoots 3 protesters, killing 2 of them. Yet this young white man is walking towards the police with a gun.
Hey, he just shot them!
And they don't see him as a threat. That underscores what I continue to say and hold a mirror to America's face, that we have 2 justice systems that exist in America. One for Black America and one for white America.
No charges were brought against Officer Shesky. The prosecutor defended that decision, saying, "I do not believe the state would be able to prove that the privilege of self-defense is not available, since Blake was armed with a knife. Blake is paralyzed after the shooting."
He has young children that he's fighting to live for. So he's concentrating on living. He's concentrating on being able to walk again.
He was always my biggest supporter. It didn't matter anything I wanted to do. He was always there.
Columbus, Ohio. 47-year-old Andre Hill was at a friend's house when police responded to a non-emergency call placed by a neighbor. Police body camera footage shows Hill walking out of a garage with a cell phone in his left hand, then being shot multiple times by Officer Adam Coy, who claimed Hill had a gun in his right hand.
Put your hands out to the side.
Hill was never found to be in possession of a weapon.
He literally dies slowly after they put him in handcuffs, never once attempting to render medical assistance to him. I call that cruel and unusual punishment.
Officer Coy was swiftly terminated and charged with murder. He's pleaded not guilty, and that case is ongoing. Hill's family is still mourning the loss of the man they say was their rock.
I watch videos. I have 2 favorite videos of him. Sometimes it just makes me sad knowing that he's not going to come back, but just to hear his voice and watch the video, it's comforting. I just think that we just need to keep the torch lit for Andre. We don't want him to be forgotten.
Breonna Taylor, Daniel Prude, Jonathan Price, Casey Goodson, Patrick Warren Sr., and others. Names we've come to know only because of their deadly encounters with police. Policy expert Jesse Janetta explains the current legal structure gives a lot of leeway to police regarding use of force.
The law defines, in most cases, a reasonableness standard where the officer has reasonable reason to fear for his or her life or what immediately may happen. But that puts a lot of the onus on individual decision making and continues to raise a lot of questions about how that is thought through in specific situations.
Crump has represented the families of Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, as well as George Floyd. He says a new day could be coming.
George Floyd gives us hope that we are finally getting to the point where we're going to hold these police officers who use excessive force accountable.
Just last Wednesday, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed in the House. It aims to end racial and religious profiling, ban chokeholds and no-knock warrants federally, require officers to use body cameras, make it easier to invest and prosecute police misconduct, among other sweeping goals. Its future, though, remains unclear as it heads to the Senate. Back in Minneapolis, the stakes could not be higher. The city, the country, the world are watching and waiting, many believing it's not just Derek Chauvin on trial, but the idea of justice itself.
Obviously, as an African American, you want to see someone who looks like you have justice. But I've got to believe white people need to see that too, to know that the America that we all believe in is who she says she is.
Saw case after case there. I'd like to bring in our friend T.J. Holmes. Most recently, Daniel Prude, another instance of a black man who lost his life shortly after an interaction with police. That was also caught on camera. And yet we heard the grand jury deciding not to bring forward any charges. It would seem to me that for many in the black community, it seems like there's a double injustice. First, you have this unnecessary loss of life, and then quite often, no repercussions, no consequences.
You mentioned Daniel Prude. Philando Castile, that officer, we watched him die on Facebook Live. That officer was acquitted. Breonna Taylor, the only officer that was actually charged, is the one who missed her, who was charged for actually endangering others by the bullets going into somewhere else. The officer involved in Michael Brown never faced charges. Eric Garner, a grand jury, did not indict. You can go on and on and on. So when you see something like this and you think, okay, this is different this time. We see this video. This is going to be different this time. But we have said that so many times before when it comes to the black community, thinking there is no way you can come to, based on what we see with our own eyes, a different conclusion other than to indict or to convict, and time again. So there's a collective holding of the breath for the black community. And even on something like this, we're starting to hear what a defense may be. We're starting to hear what could be the case. We're starting to hear about lesser charges. So it does, to your point there, feel like a double injustice. We had to watch this, first of all, have to wait now to see what happens. If charges were going to be filed, there was some doubt there. Now we have to wait to see. It's just, it feels like a constant trauma for the black community because we've been down this road so many times before.
Many people hope for a different outcome, but expect something else. You have to imagine that it's going to be difficult to find an impartial juror. Give us a sense of some of the questions on that jury questionnaire.
You can't find anybody, really. It's certainly in this country, but really anywhere on the face of the planet almost now, because it sparked protests all over the world. Find anybody who's not familiar with this case. So they're asking questions to the potential jurors, like, have you participated in the protest? And they were so specific as to say, even if you were, did you hold a sign? If you held a sign, what did that sign say? Asking questions about, what were your interactions with police ever in your life? Do you feel that police treat blacks and whites equally? And there's a question in there about Blue Lives Matter. Or do you see that favorably or unfavorably? And again, lawyers are supposed to do what lawyers are supposed to do, but you see kind of this divide that kind of plays out in our debate in this country. You're either this side or that side. You either support police or you support the Black Lives Matter movement. And you can tell that the lawyers and the sides are trying to figure out who would be more favorable to their particular client. That's legal, that's lawyering, but from a grander scheme, that really kind of tells us where we are in this country in terms of pick a side, choose, and there's just too much nuance in a story and in a case like this that we need to be having more conversations about. You can actually support police, but have a big problem with some of what police do. You can actually support Black Lives Matter, but still take issue with some of the things that are taking place in the black community.
Yeah, a bit of nuance there. Unprecedented decision by the judge here to broadcast this case live.
How could you not? I mean, how could you not? I mean, we already talking about calls about injustice and the system not working for the black community. Can you imagine us having to wait and get trickles and little information here and there? You need to let people see this. We have got to see what's happening in this courtroom. The ramifications of this are vast, and this is one of those moments. This is one of those cases, historic cases, that could change the course of of our debate in this country and hopefully the course of our system in this country. But we have to see. I don't know what other choice the judge could have had. We have to see what happens in that courtroom.
And that's why I just call this all the so-called racial reckoning, right?
So-called.
Because
who picked that term?
Been yet, right?
Who picked that term?
What has been reckoned with? Exactly. To the point. TJ Holmes, thank you so much for your time.
Hey,
appreciate you coming in studio, in the building for us tonight.
Hey, invite me back anytime. I don't know why. I'll never get an invitation here. Why?
You'll be back. Still ahead here on Prime, the growing calls to resign in the New York governor who remains defiant. The alleged hazing death under investigation as we're hearing the frantic 911 call for help. And with so many states lifting restrictions, we take a look at how many have guidelines like mask mandates by the numbers. But first, our tweet of the day. The photographer for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex tweeting congrats that Harry is about to become a girl dad on this International Women's Day.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart that he did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown Hate, The War Among Us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
Tuesday night on
Soul of a Nation.
Real stories, real conversation.
I see the tears in your eyes.
And there will be music.
Soul of a Nation.
Tuesday night at 10, 9 Central on ABC.
Meet the Prince, pretending to be part of one of the world's richest royal families.
A con. So outrageous.
But
it was just the tip of the iceberg.
I'm Whoopi Goldberg. This is the con.
All new and royally good. Wednesday on ABC.
What kind of music do you want to make, Miss Franklin?
I want to make hits. Go get your respect.
Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming.
Welcome back, everyone. And now to the battle over lifting mask mandates and other COVID restrictions, coming as the CDC issues new guidelines for vaccinated Americans, while warning that now is not the time to let our guard down. Here's where we are with masking by the numbers. 6 states have recently lifted their statewide mask mandate or announced plans to do so in the coming weeks, including Texas, Wyoming, Mississippi, Montana, Iowa, and North Dakota. 2 more states, Utah and Alabama, plan to lift their mask mandate next month. They join the 11 states that have never had statewide mask mandates. On the other hand, 31 U.S. states require everyone to mask up as concerns over virus variants remain high. In Houston, Texas, a state that's lifting its mask mandate, the city detected the UK variant in 31 of its 39 wastewater treatment plants, a sign that the mutation is spreading. And finally, while still high, the national 7-day average of daily COVID cases has now dropped to just under 60,000 cases a day on average. That's a 12.5% drop in the past week. Still lots to get to tonight here on Prime. The mother demanding action after she claims her son was invited to a sleepover only to be tortured. She recently divorced Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, and tonight we're learning Mackenzie Scott has moved on and tied the knot with a teacher. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
We will guide you through it all tonight. We have made it through another week together.
Big hug, Richard.
We tell all our patients how much they're loved. We hold their hands.
David, we're showing our love and support for all the ICU staff.
They're the heroes in this.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, with America's most watched newscast. #1 in late night versus the competition. The #1 news magazine on Friday nights. #1 in politics across this historic election versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show. And #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
Tonight on ABC.
Soul of a Nation.
It will be powerfully great.
I see the tears in your eyes.
Tonight at 10/9 Central on ABC.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Wednesday night, get ready for
a con so big, so outrageous, never seen anything like it before.
Meet the Prince, pretending to be part of one of the world's richest royal families.
Living large.
But
holy cow, who is this person?
He stole approximately $8.1 million.
Where was all this money coming from? Buckle up.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
I'm Whoopi Goldberg. This is The Con.
All new and royally good. Wednesday on ABC.
It's the announcement that millions of Americans have been waiting for. The CDC saying today that Americans who have received the COVID-19 vaccine can gather with vaccinated grandparents or friends without wearing masks or keeping their distance. Grandparents can visit with and hug family members that aren't vaccinated, as long as those family members don't have underlying medical conditions that put them at high risk for COVID-19. But don't throw those masks away just yet. The CDC says vaccinated people still need to wear face coverings in public and around people at high risk.
And still over 90% of our population is not fully vaccinated.
After passing the Senate, the president's $1.9 trillion coronavirus stimulus bill now expected to be kicked back to the House tomorrow. House Speaker predicting it's on track for the president to sign it this week.
We'll be having a further discussion about this bill as we move forward to its passage in the next 24, 48 hours.
People won't have to wait months and months and months. It'll be right in their pocket.
I'm grateful for the time I've had to serve.
Another blow to Republicans in the U.S. Senate as Senator Roy Blunt becomes the latest member of the GOP to announce he'll be retiring. The Missouri Republican is the 5th GOP senator to announce his retirement ahead of the 2022 midterms.
Okay, his face is very purple. Okay, let's do CPR.
An Ohio college student has died after an alleged hazing incident involving alcohol. Stone Foltz was a sophomore at Bowling Green State University. The fraternity Pi Kappa Alpha has been suspended. This incident follows a student death last week at Virginia Commonwealth University. A student there died allegedly after drinking too much during a hazing ritual.
He wanted to impress them and
part of the brotherhood.
Students at the University of Colorado Boulder say the large crowds battling police are expressing frustration over COVID restrictions.
It was Saturday night when the parties just off campus at the University of Colorado turned into what police are calling a riot. Tear gas was used to disperse about 800 people. A car was tipped over. Windows were broken. Now students are saying it was in response to COVID rules that have hampered their ability to party and have freedom.
They feel like they've had their freedoms taken away from them by the school, by the county. This was a revolt. This was what the people wanted. So,
police and the university say they will take action against those identified.
Billionaire philanthropist and author Mackenzie Scott, who was formerly married to Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, has remarried. The groom, Dan Jewett, a science teacher in Seattle, made the announcement on the philanthropic website The Giving Pledge, writing, "I am married to one of the most generous and kind people I know." In 2019, after 25 years, Scott and Bezos went through a high-profile divorce, leaving her as one of the world's richest women. In 2020 alone, she donated nearly $6 billion to organizations such as historically black colleges and universities, food banks, women's organizations, and other efforts that support marginalized communities. And Jewett is saying he is grateful for the exceptional privilege it will be to partner in giving away assets with the potential to do so much good when shared. Jeff Bezos sending his best wishes to the newlyweds, saying, "Dan is such a great guy, and I'm happy and excited for the both of them."
And now to the New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. With new accusations of sexual harassment emerging, he's denying the claims and defying calls to resign, saying that to resign based on unproven allegations would be anti-democratic. Our Stephanie Ramos has the latest.
Tonight, as calls for his resignation grow louder, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is digging in, refusing to quit and showing he's on the job, visiting a mass vaccination site in Manhattan.
It was a long year. It was a hard year. It was a challenging year. It was a frightening year. It was a painful year.
The governor speeding off without taking questions. Over the weekend, 2 more women accused him of inappropriate behavior, bringing the total to 5. Karen Hinton was an aide to Cuomo when he was HUD secretary in the 90s and claims he once invited her to his hotel room for a meeting. When it was over,
he walked across from his couch and embraced me intimately. It was not just a hug. It was an intimate embrace. I pulled away. He brought me back. I pulled away again and said, "Look, I need some sleep. I'm going."
Cuomo vehemently denies it.
She has been a long time political adversary of mine.
Stephanie, thank you. An investigation is now underway in Texas after disturbing allegations of bullying and abuse against a middle schooler. After the mother of 13-year-old Samarion Humphrey says her son endured being slapped, shot at with BB guns, and even forced to drink urine by former teammates of his football team during a sleepover. Joining us now is Samarion, his mother, Summer Smith, along with her attorney, Kim T. Cole. Thank you all for being here. Samarion, I'd like to start with you. How are you doing, and how did you end up going to that sleepover?
I'm doing better. I love the support and stuff. So when it came to it, one of the boys, he invited me over during lunch, and I asked my mom, and she was kind of skeptical at first, but then I just begged her for an entire week, and then I guess she just kind of, she talked to the dad, and then we thought it was a good idea, so.
And are these people who had bullied you before, or you thought that they were friends?
Can I cut in on this? Is that okay?
Of course.
Okay, so what it is we're talking about 5 different people, right? So there was only one that was his friend that he was thinking was his friend. Him and this friend had been over, several times, weeks leading up. It wasn't, they were football together previous 2 years about. And then he's never had any problems with that particular guy. That particular guy has been nice to him, befriended him, they played the game. So he had no other knowledge of the three boys that had previously bullied him coming to that party on that Saturday.
As a mom, how do you feel that your son is doing, and what have the last few weeks been like for him?
The last few weeks have been absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. He thought that this person was his friend. He trusted him. He told me with his own mouth that he didn't know how to feel. He was disappointed. He couldn't believe what had happened. And I honestly believe he's still processing it all, because ever since, Tuesday, the story just kind of took off, and we haven't even had time to figure things out or have the tough conversations that we need to have, because everything happens so fast. But the love and support and that everyone has showed him during this time has made a huge difference. I will say that.
And Samarian, I'd like to ask you in your own words, if you're able to kind of walk us through what happened that night. You think that you're going to a friend's house for a sleepover, and then what?
And then these boys, they came over without my knowledge. And then one of them, who I thought was my friend, reassured me that it was all going to be okay, that we had no hard feelings. But I knew that something was going to go down, because the type of people that those boys were, they are not good people. And then, so we were playing video games, and then we go outside. That's when somebody's idea to have, to all get shot at. So, I went so they all started shooting at me. I didn't have a BB gun at this time. They all started shooting me. And then one shot me in my privates, and then they just pelted me all over my body. And then I just felt I was hurting. And then we go back home, and then I was tired, so I went to bed. And then I went to bed, and then throughout my entire sleeping, or slept, they were assaulting me by hitting me and slapping me. And then one of the boys, they woke me up, and then he told me that I wasn't breathing and that I needed to drink this water. And now I have a hard time going to sleep in the first place. So I was very dazed, and I didn't know what was going on. But they all urinated into a cup, and then they made me drink it.
At any point, were you able to get a parent, or were you able to call home and say that you wanted to leave?
I was asleep. I did not know any of this even happened until multiple days after.
And Kim, what kind of actions could potentially be taken against these minors who allegedly did these things to Samarian, or against any adults who might have known what was going on?
We certainly hope that the appropriate criminal charges be filed in this action. It's being characterized as bullying, but this far exceeds bullying. What these young men did was criminal. This was assault. They shot at him with a BB gun, and they slapped him and then forced him to drink urine. This is not bullying. This is assault, and they should be charged appropriately. And also, what Samarian did not mention, that they were calling him racial slurs the entire time. So this rises to the level of a hate crime. So we would like to see charges brought against all of the young men who assaulted him, as well as the parents who allowed this to happen in their home.
So you believe that this was racially motivated?
Absolutely.
And Summer, you're currently trying to raise funds for your son's therapy. What are some of the mental health issues that he's been displaying since the night of that sleepover?
The mental health issues started before the sleepover. So we were already trying to get him into a better place. And so that literally we just took it all the way back.
And Kim, have you been in contact with the school district? And if so, what are they saying?
The school district has taken the position that because this this particular event occurred off campus, they've taken a hands-off approach to it. However, Samarion's psychological abuse happened on campus. Much of it happened on campus prior to this incident. And so he was already not in a good place when this horrific assault happened. And that happened on campus. There is documentation of him experiencing some bullying and assault on campus.
Well,
and Plano ISD has failed to act.
Samarion, we are certainly sad that you had to endure this. We thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story with us. Thank you all. Samarion, Summer, and Kim.
Thank you.
And before we go tonight, our image of the day. Today's broken glass ceilings are tomorrow's stepping stones. Those words are on a plaque near the Fearless Girl statue down in Wall Street. The new broken glass art installation made for this International Women's Day. The broken glass meant to represent the new ground women are breaking every day. And that is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us, and have a great night.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know